Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone in today's class for the first intermediate grade. Our textbook is Super Goal number 1. Today we'll be teaching Unit 7, Where Do You Live? And we will learn the form, meaning, and function. This lesson will be presented by me, teacher Mazen Al-Harbi, and the sign language will be presented by Mr. Fawaz Al-Agil. So welcome everyone. Our objectives in today's lesson that we hope at the end of this lesson you will be able to use the comparative and superlative forms of the adjectives. So from last lesson we have read this letter from our friend Robert, and also we have learned how to write a similar letter, and we said that we have different parts of a letter. We said that we have the greetings part, which is started with Dear Khalid, and we have the main part, and we have the closing part where we write our name. So this is how we can write our letter, and we said that that letter was about the neighborhood, and we said that sometimes friends have someone they called a pen pal, who write their letters to or write their news, and they exchange letters or email from time to time. And also we have learned about the personal pronoun, and we said that in English, instead of mention the names or mention the nouns more than one time in a text, we can use instead a personal pronoun. For example, if you have a look at the first sentence here, I live in a nice neighborhood. It has friendly people. So it here is actually a personal pronoun. Instead of repeating the word neighborhood more than once, we use a personal pronoun just to make it easier to read and also easier to write. Let's see another example. The houses aren't modern. They are traditional. So here is another personal pronoun. So instead of mentioning the houses again in these sentences, we mention instead they as a personal pronoun. Also, my neighbors are nice people. They are friendly. Here is also a personal pronoun, which is they. We can mention they whether for houses or for people. My neighbors. And the last one, my neighbors and I are friendly. We always say hello. So here is a new personal pronoun, which is we, and instead of saying my neighbors and I are friendly, my neighbors and I always say hello, here instead we use the we as a personal pronoun. So we have learned this at the last lesson. So today we are going to learn the comparative and the superlative forms of adjectives. Let's see here, for example, this is an apple, a big apple, and this one is a bigger apple, and this one is the biggest apple of these apples. So this apple is big, and this apple is bigger than this one, and this apple is the biggest of all these apples. Let's see another example. So this ball is small, and this one is smaller, and this ball is the smallest of all these balls. So here we have a small ball, and this one is smaller than this, and this ball is the smallest of all these balls. So here we have an apple which is big, a ball which is small. These we call them adjectives. This apple and this ball, big and small, we call them adjectives. And here the word bigger, which is this apple is bigger than this one, and this ball is smaller than this one, these we call them comparative, where we compare two things. We compare this one with this one. But if we want to compare more than two things, we would use the superlative form. The superlative form like this one, the biggest and the smallest. This form we call it the superlative form. So again, Here we have adjectives, big and small are adjectives. Here we have a comparative form, bigger and smaller. Comparative forms usually comes between two things. And superlative form between three things or even more. So this apple is the biggest of all these apples, and this ball is the smallest of all these balls. Let's take further examples. So, as we said earlier, that the ball here is small. And we have even something smaller, which is the ring. The ring here is smaller than the ball. The ring is smaller than the ball. And also, this candy is the smallest. The smallest of who? It's the smallest of all these things. Is the smallest of all these things. So, we used here smaller than when we compare two things, the ring and the ball, and we use the word the smallest when we are comparing the candy, the ring, and the ball. So this form we call it the comparative form. The comparative form, where we add on adjective, where we added on the adjective here, we added ER and we add the word than. We added ER and we added the word than. So this is the regular adjective. We added on it, if we want to compare two things, we added ER and than. And if we want to compare it with the three things or more, we would use three letters, which are E, S, and T. And this one we call it the superlative form. Let's take another example. So this boy is tall, and this building is taller than the boy. And this tower between the boy and the building is the tallest. So here again the same example. So the boy is tall. Here the adjective we use is tall. And the building is taller than the boy. And here we added ER and the word than. Why? Because we are comparing two things, the building and the boy. But if we want to compare all the three things or even more, we would add to the adjective three letters, which are E, S, and T. So here why we said the tower is the tallest among the building and among the boy. So this form, the ER and adding than, we call it the comparative form. And this form, ES and T, we call it the superlative form. So this is our rule for today, that we add on the adjectives to make comparison. Whether if we want to compare between two things, like the boy and the building, or if we want to compare more, like the tower, when we compare it to the building and the boy. So our rule for today said that we use an adjective plus ER if we have a one-syllable adjective, like for example, tall. If we want to compare or we use this adjective in comparison, we would simply only add ER and the word than, if we want to compare it between two things. But if we have a longer adjective, if we have an adjective that has more than one syllable, instead of adding ER to the adjective, we would use more. We would use more plus the adjective. For example, the subway is convenient. The subway is convenient. You see the difference between the word convenient and tall? Tall is a small or a short adjective, but convenient is a longer one, has more than one syllable. So this is why we don't make any changes to this adjective. We only add before it the word more. So if we want to compare between two things, we would say the subway is convenient. The subway is more convenient than the bus. So here, could you note the changes we have made here? For the short adjective, we added ER and the word than. But for the longer adjective, we add more before the adjective and then after the adjective. Here, these are the changes we have made if we want you to use the comparative form, which is to compare two things or two people. The other comparison form we have, which is the superlative, where we can compare between three things, three people, or even more. For example, we use the article the and the adjective, and es and t, we add it to the adjective. For example, the hotel is the tallest. The hotel is the tallest building in the city. So here we added es and t for the adjective tall, because we won't compare it with another thing, but more with one building, but more than one building. This is why we said we add only es and t. And that's only for a one-syllable adjective, for a short adjective. But if we have a longer adjective, or an adjective that has more than one syllable, we would use the most. So for example, here we would say the most modern. So can you see this adjective modern is not a short adjective, it's a longer one, has more than one syllable. So in this case, we would say the most modern. The most modern. Here we have another example. The subway is the fastest. The subway is the fastest. So here we can say the adjective fast is a short adjective, one syllable adjective, and here simply we add es and t. But if we have a longer adjective or has more than one syllable, we would use before this adjective the most. So let's continue. It is also the most convenient. It is also the most convenient. So these are what we do with the superlative form. So with the superlative form, we add es and t for the short adjectives or the one-syllable adjectives. But we add the most for the longer adjective or the adjectives that has more than one syllable. And also, we have some exception in this rule that are some different in forms. That, for example, we use er or est, as we said, for one-syllable adjectives, but with the adjectives that ends with y, we're going to make a simple changes. The rule said that if we have an adjective that ends with y, like the word busy, we would change this y into an I, and we simply add er. So we would change this, or we would change the y, change it into I, and we add er. And also, we'll continue if you want to make the superlative form, and we would say, we would add I, es, and t, the busiest. So busy, busier, the busiest. Also, we have other spelling rules. For example, the most adjectives, simply like this one, old, olders, oldest. So nothing changes. Old, this is the simple adjective. We want to use it in comparative form. We would add er, older. And if we want to use it in the superlative form, we add es and t, oldest. But we have, as I said, that we have some exception in some adjectives. For example, those adjectives that ends with e, we only add r. We don't have to double the letter e. For example, nice, this is an adjective that ends with e. If we want to use it in the comparative form, we would say nicer. We only added here r. And if we want to use it in the superlative form, we would say the nicest. Here we only added s and t. Also, with the adjectives, as we said earlier in busy, with the adjectives that ends with y, we change the y into an I. So easy become easier and easiest. And also, one more rule in regard to the comparison, the adjectives that ends in one vowel followed by one consonant. in English, we have letters, we call them the vowel letters. And those vowel letters are these five, which are A, E, I, U, and O. We have learned this before. So this vowel, if it comes before a one consonant letter, we double the last letter. For example, this adjective is big. Okay, here we can see the vowel followed by a consonant letter. So what do we do in this case? We double the consonant letter and it would become bigger. You see how we double it here? Big, bigger, biggest. And also another example with hot. Here we have a vowel which is O followed by consonant T. Hot, hotter, the hottest. So these are the spelling rules that we need to pay attention to if we want to use them in comparison. And also, as in every rule, we do have some irregular forms, okay? And one of these most famous irregular forms in comparison rule, which are good and bad. So if we want to use a comparison using the adjective good, we won't add here ER or add the most. No, we have different form, which is good. And for the comparative form, we would say better. And for the superlative form, we would say the best. And also for the adjective bad, for the comparative form, if you want to compare two things or two people, we would say worse. And for more than three people or three things, we would say the worst. So this is the exception for this comparison rule. Now, on page 63, we do have this interesting exercise. What we should do in this exercise, we're going to complete the sentences with the comparative or the superlative form of the adjectives that we have here in parentheses, and we should use the before superlative. So if we have a superlative, we should use the before we write them. So let's do the sentence number one. Sentence number one says, Gino's restaurant has good pizza in town. So before you answer, you should ask yourself one thing, that does this sentence imply comparing between two things or more than two things? Excellent. It compares this restaurant with other pizza in town, in the whole town. So it's not only between two restaurants. So here we would say, Gino's restaurant has the best pizza in town. Why? Because we're comparing the pizza restaurant all around the town and not only between two restaurants. Number two, I think the pizza at Roma's is good, this is the adjective we will use, than Gino's. So ask yourself again, is this sentence imply comparing between two things or more than two things? Excellent. It implies to compare between two things, which is Roma's restaurant and Gino's restaurant. So in comparing between two things, the comparative form for good, which is very good, it is better. So we would say the pizza at Roma's is better than Gino's. Number three, the bookstore is popular than the library. So here it compares between, very good, it compares between between two things, the bookstore and the library. And since here we have a longer adjective, we would use the comparative form for longer adjectives, which is more popular than. And number four, summer is, and the adjective is hot, and dry time of the year. So here we are comparing the weather of the year, of the entire year. So he would use the superlative form. Summer is the hottest and the driest time of the year. And number five, don't eat there. That restaurant has bad food in town. So now we are comparing for the whole town. And since we have this adjective bad, the superlative form of bad is the worst. Now, let's move on to the last exercise we have for today, which is I would like you to work with a partner, try to disagree with them with the following statement. For example, if your partner says the health club is older than the school, I want you to disagree with him by using the opposite adjective. In this case, here is new. So you would say, no, it is not, it is newer. So the opposite of old is new, and in comparison, it would become newer. Let's try to do number one. The Amazon is longer than the Nile. The Amazon is longer than the Nile. Now we want to disagree with it. We want to say it is shorter. So how we would say this? We would say, no, it isn't. It is shorter. No, it isn't. It is shorter. Let's do number two. Buses are faster than trains. And now we want to disagree. We want to say we use the adjective slow. So the answer will be that no, they are not. Buses are not faster than trains. They are slower. Number three. The city is quieter than the town. The city is quieter than the town. So here we won't say quieter, we want to say the opposite, which is the adjective noisy. So we would say, no, it is not. It is noisier. It is noisier. Number four. China is bigger than Canada. Now we want to disagree. We want to say it is smaller. Then we would say, no, it is not. It is smaller. The next one. Roma's pizza is better than Gino's. And here, instead of saying better, we want to use the adjective bad. What is the comparative form of bad? Very good. It is worse. So we would say, no, it is not. It is worse. The last one. Cities are cleaner than towns. Cities are cleaner than towns. And here also we want to disagree using the adjective dirty. The answer will be, no, they are not. They are dirtier. Now, until here we have reached the end of our lesson. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.